Caroline Ashford was invisible, 27 years old, sharp-minded, and utterly ignored by the society that mattered. While her younger sister walked down the aisle in triumph, Caroline stood in the shadows where respectable spinsters belonged. But on that summer afternoon in Bath, everything shattered. The Duke of Ravensworth, England's most desired bachelor, spoke words so cruel they cut through years of silent endurance. What he did not expect was her reply. What neither of them expected was how a single moment of confrontation would ignite something neither could control or deny. Something that looked dangerously like love. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Hartfield Manor, casting golden patterns across the marble floors. Caroline Ashford stood before the mirror in the guest chamber, fastening the last pearl button at her throat. The dove-grey silk she wore was elegant, appropriate, forgettable. Exactly what was expected of her. Below, the sounds of celebration drifted upward. Her younger sister Sophia's wedding day had arrived with all the grandeur their mother had orchestrated. Carriages lined the circular drive, delivering guests dressed in their finest. Laughter echoed through the halls. Champagne flowed freely. Everything sparkled with promise and triumph. Caroline adjusted the simple cameo at her neck and descended the curved staircase. No one turned to look. No one ever did. In the drawing room, her mother held court among the elder ladies, her face flushed with satisfaction. Lady Ashford had secured what every ambitious mother desired, a wealthy match for her beautiful daughter. That Sophia was 19 and radiant made the victory sweeter. That Caroline was 27 and still unmarried made it necessary. Caroline moved through the gathering like a ghost, offering quiet congratulations, accepting absent-minded acknowledgements. She had perfected this role over 7 London seasons, the dutiful older sister, the intelligent companion, the woman too clever for her own good, too plain to inspire poetry, too old to inspire hope. She found refuge near the French doors that opened onto the garden. The June air carried the scent of roses and freshly cut grass. Outside, white tents had been erected for the reception. Servants moved with practiced efficiency, arranging tables laden with silver and crystal. How many weddings had she attended? How many times had she smiled and pretended the ache in her chest was merely indigestion from too much cake? A hand touched her elbow. She turned to find Sophia, breathtaking in ivory silk and Belgian lace, her dark curls crowned with orange blossoms. "Sister, you look pale. Are you unwell?" Caroline managed to smile. "Simply tired. You look exquisite." Sophia's expression softened. "I wish things were different. I wish you had found someone too." The kindness stung more than cruelty ever could. Caroline squeezed her sister's hand. "This is your day. Be happy. That is all I wish." Before Sophia could respond, their mother's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Sophia, Lord Pemberton's family has arrived. Come at once." Sophia hesitated, then kissed Caroline's cheek and hurried away. Caroline watched her go, watched her step into the life that should have been ordinary but felt impossibly distant. Marriage, partnership, being chosen. The ceremony took place in the estate's private chapel, an intimate affair despite the 100 guests in attendance. Caroline sat in the third row, surrounded by distant cousins who made polite conversation before turning away. She kept her spine straight, her hands folded, her face composed. When the vicar pronounced Sophia and Lord Pemberton husband and wife, applause filled the chapel. Caroline clapped too, the sound mechanical in her own ears. She filed out with the others, crossed the lawn to where the reception awaited, and accepted a glass of champagne she would not drink. The afternoon stretched before her like an endless corridor. She knew what would come next. Congratulations offered to the bride, toasts to the happy couple. Dancing she would watch from the sidelines, questions about her own prospects asked with false sympathy and genuine satisfaction by women who had daughters younger and more marriageable than she. Caroline drifted toward the garden's edge, where a stone path led through sculpted hedges. The noise of the celebration faded slightly. She breathed deeply, willing herself to endure. She had survived worse. 7 years of being presented to eligible men who looked through her as if she were made of glass. Countless balls where her dance card remained tragically blank. The slow, crushing realization that her intelligence, her wit, her passion for literature and philosophy meant nothing in a world that valued only youth and conventional beauty. Her mother had stopped introducing her to prospects 3 seasons ago. Now Caroline served as chaperone to Sophia, useful in her invisibility, the respectable spinster. The cautionary tale whispered behind fans. She found a bench beneath a willow tree and sat, grateful for the shade and solitude. From here she could see the reception but remain apart from it. Safe. But safety, she had learned, was another word for loneliness. The champagne glass grew warm in her hand. She set it aside and closed her eyes. What would it feel like to be seen? To walk into a room and have someone's breath catch? To be wanted not for duty or convenience but for herself? Foolish thoughts. Dangerous thoughts. The kind that left bruises when reality inevitably arrived. A burst of laughter made her open her eyes. Near the main tent, a group of young women had gathered, their pastel gowns bright against the green lawn. They whispered and giggled, heads bent together. One of them glanced toward the bench where Caroline sat, said something, and the others laughed harder. Caroline looked away. She had long ago stopped trying to decode such moments. The mockery was always the same. The spinster, the unfortunate Miss Ashford. What a shame about the elder daughter. She rose and walked deeper into the garden, following a path bordered by lavender. The purple blooms hummed with bees. The sound was oddly comforting, a reminder that life continued whether or not anyone noticed you. The path curved around a tall hedge and opened onto a smaller garden, more wild than formal. Here roses climbed stone walls and ivy spilled across weathered benches. Caroline had discovered this spot earlier in the week. No one else seemed to visit. It was hers, at least for today. She sat on a bench facing a fountain, its water trickling peacefully. For the first time since morning, the tightness in her chest eased. She allowed herself to simply be. Not the dutiful sister, not the respectable spinster, just Caroline. Tired, lonely, but still here, still breathing. The afternoon sun slanted through the leaves, painting shadows across the ground. In the distance, music began. The dancing had started. Soon, they would serve dinner. Then more toasts. Then the bride and groom would depart in a shower of rice and rose petals, beginning their life together. And Caroline would return to the London townhouse with her parents, to the same round of social calls and charitable work that filled her days without fulfilling them. She would read books that challenged her mind, take walks that cleared her thoughts, and continue the quiet, invisible existence society had assigned her, unless something changed. Unless she found the courage to demand more than survival. But courage required hope, and hope was a luxury she could no longer afford. The fountain's gentle music filled the silence. Caroline closed her eyes and let herself imagine, just for a moment, a different life. One where she mattered, where she was chosen, where love found her despite everything. Then she opened her eyes, stood, and smoothed her grey skirts. It was time to return to the celebration. Time to smile and endure and pretend everything was fine, because that was what respectable women did, even when they were breaking inside. Caroline returned to the reception with practiced composure, her mask firmly in place. The main tent buzzed with conversation and laughter. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead despite the afternoon sun. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and delicate pastries. Everything gleamed with carefully orchestrated perfection. She accepted another glass of champagne from a passing servant and positioned herself near a marble column, a strategic location that offered visibility without requiring participation. From here, she could observe without being observed. Or so she thought. The speeches had begun. Lord Pemberton's father raised his glass, offering warm wishes and gentle humor about married life. The guests laughed on cue. Caroline's mother dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, the picture of maternal satisfaction. The heat beneath the tent grew oppressive. Caroline's dress clung to her skin, despite the light fabric. She needed air, space, a moment away from the performance. She slipped through the crowd toward the tent's rear opening, where a gravel path led deeper into the gardens. The afternoon sun had softened into golden hour, painting everything with amber light. She followed the path past flowering beds and trimmed hedges, grateful for the relative quiet. Her feet carried her toward the rose garden she had discovered earlier, that secret pocket of wildness where she could breathe. But as she rounded the tall hedge that separated the formal gardens from the wilder sections, voices stopped her. Male voices. Conversation drifting from just beyond the stone wall draped in climbing roses. She recognized the aristocratic drawl immediately. The kind of voices that belonged to men who had never questioned their right to speak, to judge, to dismiss. Caroline should have announced her presence, should have turned back. But something in their tone, that casual cruelty she had heard too many times before, rooted her feet to the ground. "I cannot fathom why Pemberton invited half of Bath," one voice said. "The ceremony was interminable," another man laughed. "Be grateful the bride is pretty enough to look at." "Did you see the sister?" Caroline's breath caught. Ice spread through her chest. The Duke of Ravensworth's voice cut through the afternoon air like a blade. "Ah, yes, the elder Miss Ashford. A cautionary tale if ever there was one." More laughter. Someone said something she could not quite hear. Then Ravensworth continued, his tone laced with aristocratic boredom that made every word more devastating. 27 if she is a day. 7 seasons on the marriage mart with nothing to show for it. One might admire her persistence if it were not so pathetic. Caroline's hands clenched around her champagne glass. The stem bit into her palm. "She has a decent enough dowry, does she not?" another voice ventured. "Money cannot compensate for such profound lack of appeal," Ravensworth replied smoothly. "Intelligence in a woman is tolerable only when paired with beauty. Without it, cleverness becomes merely tiresome. She reads, I am told, philosophy, politics. As if any man wants a wife who thinks herself his intellectual equal." The other men murmured agreement. Caroline felt her face flame, felt years of silent endurance crystallizing into something sharp and hot in her chest. Better to remain unmarried than shackle oneself to a woman whose only recommendation is that she can discuss Locke over breakfast, Ravensworth concluded. The marriage mart has standards for a reason. Some women simply do not meet them. The words hung in the air like poison. Caroline stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She had heard such sentiments before, whispered behind fans, implied in polite conversation, but never stated so boldly, never with such casual cruelty. Something inside her snapped. She did not think, did not calculate consequences. She simply moved. Caroline stepped around the hedge and into full view of the 4 men lounging near the garden wall. They stood in various states of leisure, jackets unbuttoned, champagne glasses in hand. The Duke of Ravensworth stood slightly apart from the others, tall and commanding even in repose. Dark hair, sharp features, the kind of face artists immortalized in marble. Cold grey eyes that had never looked at her with anything but indifference, until now. Those eyes widened slightly as she appeared. The other men fell silent, their expressions shifting from surprise to poorly concealed horror. Caroline walked forward with deliberate grace, her grey skirts whispering against the gravel. She stopped 3 feet from Ravensworth and met his gaze directly. "Your Grace," she said, her voice steady despite the fury coursing through her veins. "I could not help but overhear your assessment of my character and worth." Ravensworth's expression smoothed into aristocratic neutrality, but something flickered in his eyes. Discomfort, perhaps even shame. He opened his mouth to speak. Caroline raised one hand, cutting him off. "Please, do not compound your cruelty with apology. We both know you meant every word." The silence stretched taut. Behind her, she heard footsteps on the path. Other guests, drawn by the tension crackling in the air. She continued, her words precise and cutting. "You speak of standards, Your Grace, of what makes a woman worthy of consideration. Allow me to offer my own assessment." Ravensworth's jaw tightened. The other men looked desperately uncomfortable, but none moved to intervene. "You possess title, wealth, and the kind of conventional handsomeness that makes silly girls sigh," Caroline said. "Yet you use these gifts to diminish others, to mock women whose only crime is failing to meet your exacting standards of decorative appeal. You mistake cruelty for wit and arrogance for confidence." One of the other men cleared his throat. "Miss Ashford, perhaps we should—" She turned her gaze on him briefly, and he fell silent. When she looked back at Ravensworth, she saw something new in his face. Not anger, something more complex. He was actually listening. "You say intelligence in a woman is tolerable only when paired with beauty," she continued. "How convenient for you. It allows you to dismiss half the population without ever risking genuine conversation, without ever being challenged or surprised or forced to reconsider your shallow assumptions." Her voice gained strength, years of suppressed fury finding expression. "I read philosophy because ideas matter more than gossip. I study politics because the world extends beyond ballrooms. I think deeply because I refuse to live on the surface of things. These are not flaws, Your Grace. They are choices. And I would rather die unmarried than shackle myself to a man who finds depth tiresome and intelligence threatening." The gathered crowd had grown. She could feel their presence, hear their shocked murmurs. Her mother would be horrified. Society would tear her apart for this breach of decorum. But Caroline found she did not care. She took one step closer to Ravensworth. His eyes never left hers. "You called me a cautionary tale," she said quietly, her words for him alone, despite the audience. "Perhaps you are right. Let me be the cautionary tale of what happens when a woman finally refuses to accept the contempt society offers her. When she stops apologizing for taking up space in a world determined to erase her." She set her champagne glass on the stone wall with deliberate care. Then she looked at Ravensworth one last time, memorizing the stunned expression on his impossibly handsome face. "I do not meet your standards, Your Grace. Thank God for that. It means I am worth something after all." Caroline turned and walked away. The crowd parted before her like water. She heard whispers erupting in her wake, felt the weight of 100 stares, but she kept her spine straight and her head high. She did not run, did not hurry. She walked with all the dignity her 27 years had taught her, past the shocked faces and open mouths, past the judgment she knew would follow. Behind her, someone laughed nervously. Someone else said her name in tones of scandalized delight. But beneath it all she heard nothing from Ravensworth himself. No cutting comeback, no dismissive retort, just silence. Caroline reached the house and slipped through a side entrance, avoiding the main gathering. Her hands trembled now that the adrenaline was fading. Her heart raced. What had she done? She climbed the stairs to her chamber and closed the door, leaning against it as her legs threatened to give way. The room felt too small, the walls pressing in. She crossed to the window and threw it open, gulping the evening air. Below she could see the reception continuing, but the energy had changed. People clustered in tight groups, heads bent in animated conversation. She had given them something to talk about, something to dissect and judge and spread across London like wildfire. The respectable Miss Ashford had caused a scene, had humiliated a duke, had thrown away the last shreds of her social standing for the sake of pride. Caroline closed her eyes. She should regret it, should be terrified of the consequences. Instead, she felt strangely light, as if she had been carrying a weight for 7 years and had finally set it down. She had spoken, had defended herself, had refused to be diminished. Whatever came next, at least she had that. A knock at the door made her turn. Her mother's voice came through tight with fury. "Caroline, open this door immediately." Caroline looked at the door, looked at her reflection in the darkening window, looked at the woman who had finally stood up for herself. Then she turned the lock and sat down to face the consequences. The confrontation with her mother lasted 2 hours. Lady Ashford paced the chamber like a caged animal, her voice rising and falling between fury and despair. Caroline sat in the chair by the window, hands folded, saying nothing. What could she say? She had committed the unforgivable sin of making herself visible. "You have ruined us," her mother hissed. "Ruined Sophia's wedding day, ruined any chance you had of securing even a modest match. What possessed you?" Caroline met her mother's eyes. "He called me pathetic." Lady Ashford waved a dismissive hand. "Men say such things. You smile and ignore it. You do not create a spectacle that will be gossiped about for months. I will not smile through my own degradation." "Then you will smile through exile," her mother snapped. "You cannot remain in London after this. The scandal will touch all of us. I have already sent word to your Aunt Beatrice in Derbyshire. You will leave tomorrow. Caroline absorbed this without expression. Exile. Banishment to the countryside. It should have felt like punishment. Instead, it felt like release. Her mother softened slightly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Caroline, you must understand. Society has rules. When you break them, there are consequences, even when the rules are cruel. Especially then, her mother said quietly. The world is not kind to women who refuse to bend. They sat in silence. Outside, the reception had ended. Carriages departed in streams, carrying guests who would spread the story across England. The spinster who humiliated a duke. The desperate woman who made a scene. The cautionary tale proven true. Caroline wondered if Ravensworth had stayed or left immediately. She wondered what he thought in those moments after she walked away. Probably nothing. Men like him did not waste time on women like her. The next morning arrived grey and cold despite being June. Caroline packed her trunk with minimal help from the servants, who avoided her eyes. Scandal was contagious. Association was dangerous. Sophia came to her chamber just before departure, still in her dressing gown. Her eyes were red from crying. I am sorry, Caroline said before her sister could speak. I did not mean to ruin your day. Sophia shook her head and embraced her tightly. You did not ruin anything. You were magnificent. Caroline pulled back, surprised. You do not think I was foolish? I think you were brave, Sophia whispered. I think you said what I have always been too afraid to say, that we are worth more than their judgments. They held each other for a long moment. Then Sophia pressed something into Caroline's hand. A small book, leather-bound and worn. Her favorite volume of poetry. For the journey, Sophia said, and for remembering you are not alone. Caroline's throat tightened. She kissed her sister's forehead and climbed into the waiting carriage. Her mother did not come to see her off. Her father offered a distracted wave from his study window. Only Sophia stood on the steps, waving until the carriage turned the corner and she disappeared from view. The journey to Derbyshire took 3 days. Caroline watched England roll past through rain-streaked windows. Villages, farms, endless green fields. With each mile from London, the tightness in her chest eased slightly. No one here knew what she had done. No one here would judge her for it. Aunt Beatrice's estate appeared on the 4th afternoon. A rambling stone manor surrounded by wild gardens and ancient oaks. The house looked pleasantly neglected, ivy climbing the walls, roses spilling over crumbling walls. Nothing like the manicured perfection of her mother's world. Aunt Beatrice herself appeared on the front steps before the carriage fully stopped. She was 60, white-haired, dressed in a paint-stained smock over practical trousers. Everything about her defied convention. There you are, she called out cheerfully. The scandalous niece. Come in, come in. I have tea and cake and no judgment whatsoever. Caroline descended from the carriage, exhausted and uncertain. Her aunt pulled her into a fierce embrace that smelled of turpentine and lavender. Your mother's letter was deliciously vague, Beatrice said, linking her arm through Caroline's and leading her inside. Something about unseemly behavior and necessary separation. I assume you finally told someone exactly what you thought of them. A duke, Caroline admitted. I told a duke exactly what I thought of him. Beatrice laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Excellent. The aristocracy could use more honesty. Come, let me show you your room. The house interior matched its exterior. Books piled on every surface, paintings in various stages of completion leaned against walls. Cats dozed on furniture. Nothing matched. Everything felt alive. Beatrice led her upstairs to a chamber overlooking the gardens. Sunlight streamed through tall windows. The bed looked soft and inviting. A writing desk stood ready near the window. You may stay as long as you wish, Beatrice said. There are no rules here except kindness and honesty. No one will judge you, no one will tell you who to be. Caroline felt something crack inside her chest. Tears she had not allowed herself to shed finally spilled over. Beatrice held her while she cried, murmuring comfort, asking nothing. When the storm passed, Caroline wiped her eyes and managed a shaky laugh. I apologize. I do not usually... Do not apologize for feeling, Beatrice interrupted firmly. You have spent too long pretending you do not. Here you can be exactly who you are. The first week passed in a blur of quiet healing. Caroline slept late, took long walks through the countryside, and read without interruption. Aunt Beatrice painted in her studio and asked no questions. They took meals together, conversation flowing easily between them. Caroline told her aunt everything: the years of being invisible, the cruel words she overheard, the confrontation that ended her London life. Beatrice listened without judgment. When Caroline finished, her aunt simply nodded. "You did the only thing a woman with dignity could do. You refused to accept their definition of your worth." "But at what cost?" Caroline asked. "I am exiled, ruined." "Are you?" Beatrice tilted her head. "Or are you finally free?" The question lingered. Caroline wandered the estate, considering it. She visited the village, where people greeted her with friendly curiosity rather than judgment. She helped Beatrice in the garden, dirt under her fingernails, sun on her face. She wrote letters to Sophia and received warm replies. And slowly, something unexpected happened. The shame began to fade. The fear of what society thought loosened its grip. She had defended herself, had spoken truth, had refused to be diminished. Maybe that was not ruin, maybe that was liberation. 2 weeks after her arrival, Caroline sat in the garden with a book. The afternoon sun warmed her shoulders. Bees hummed in the lavender. She felt for the first time in years something resembling peace. Then Aunt Beatrice appeared on the terrace holding a letter. Her expression was unreadable. "This came for you," she said, "from London." Caroline took it with trembling hands. The seal was unfamiliar, heavy paper, expensive. She broke it open and read. The words blurred together at first, then focused with shocking clarity. It was from the Duke of Ravensworth. An apology. Formal, precise, and utterly unexpected. He wrote that her words had haunted him, that he recognized the cruelty of his own, that he wished to explain himself if she would grant him the opportunity. He asked permission to call upon her. Caroline read it 3 times. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Aunt Beatrice watched her carefully. "Well?" Caroline folded the letter slowly. "He apologizes. He wishes to visit." "And what do you wish?" That was the question, was it not? What did she wish? To send him away? To maintain her anger and pride? Or to allow herself curiosity about the man who had wounded her so deeply, yet now sought forgiveness? She thought of his face in the garden, the moment her words landed and something shifted behind his cold grey eyes. She thought of his silence as she walked away, not mockery, not dismissal, silence that felt like shock. "I do not know," Caroline admitted. Beatrice smiled. "Then perhaps it is worth discovering. No one grows from certainty, only from questions that challenge us." Caroline looked down at the letter again. The Duke of Ravensworth, seeking her forgiveness. Seeking her. The absurdity of it should have made her laugh. Instead, she felt something dangerous stir in her chest, curiosity, and beneath it, something else. Something that felt like the first tremor before an earthquake. She folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket. "I will consider it." But even as she said it, she knew she had already decided. She would let him come, not because she forgave him, not because she trusted him, but because she refused to make decisions from fear. She had confronted him once. She could do it again. And perhaps in the confrontation discover what kind of man hid behind the cruelty, whether remorse was real or performance, whether he was worth her time or merely another disappointment. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Caroline watched it with new eyes, eyes that had stopped seeking approval and started seeking truth. Whatever came next, she would face it as herself, undiminished, unafraid, and if the Duke of Ravensworth wanted forgiveness, he would have to earn it. John Harrington, Duke of Ravensworth, had not slept properly in 2 weeks. Caroline Ashford's words echoed endlessly in his mind. "I would rather die unmarried than shackle myself to a man who finds depth tiresome and intelligence threatening." He had built a life on control, on aristocratic superiority, on never showing weakness. Yet 5 minutes with an angry woman in a garden had shattered that control completely. His friends had laughed afterward, called her hysterical, said she proved his point. John had smiled and agreed, because that was expected. Then he had gone home and felt sick. He kept seeing her face. Eyes blazing with fury and hurt. No tears, no pleading, just devastating honesty that cut deeper than any insult he had ever received. She had been right about everything. When had he become so cruel? He traced it back through years of being told his title made him superior, of surrounding himself with people who never challenged him, until Caroline Ashford challenged everything. He thought of her words. Let me be the cautionary tale of what happens when a woman finally refuses to accept the contempt society offers her. She had endured such contempt for years, from him, from men like him, until she made it visible. John had written an apology letter, rewriting it 17 times. Each version felt hollow. He sent it anyway. No reply came. He wrote again, asking permission to visit. Again, silence. Then this morning, a brief note from her aunt's estate. Miss Ashford declined his request. She wished him well but had no desire for further interaction. He should have accepted her refusal. Instead, he ordered his carriage prepared for Derbyshire. His man of business looked at him as though he had gone mad. Your Grace, you have commitments. The Havisham Ball, Parliament. Cancel them, John said. All of them? All of them. The journey took 2 days. The estate appeared Thursday afternoon, surprising him with comfortable neglect instead of grandeur. Wild gardens, climbing roses. A sense of life being lived rather than performed. The door opened before he knocked. A white-haired woman in paint-stained clothes regarded him with sharp blue eyes. Duke of Ravensworth, I presume, she said. Her tone was not welcoming. Mrs. Beatrice Thornton? Miss, actually. Never saw the point of marriage. She crossed her arms. My niece does not wish to see you. I understand. John met her gaze steadily. I came anyway. That was unconscionably rude of me. Beatrice's eyebrow rose slightly. At least you recognize it. I seem to be learning recognition rather late, John said quietly, but I am learning. They stood in silence. Somewhere inside, he heard music. A pianoforte played with skill and feeling. The melody was melancholy and beautiful. That is her, Beatrice said, following his gaze. She plays when she needs to think. The music continued, notes spilling through the open windows like water. John felt something tighten in his chest. This was Caroline, not the invisible spinster. Not the target of mockery, a woman who played music that made his throat ache. I will give you 10 minutes, Beatrice said finally. If she asks you to leave, you will go immediately. Understood? Understood. She led him through the house, books everywhere, paintings propped against walls, cats sleeping in sunlight, nothing like his cold London mansion. The music grew louder as they approached a door. Beatrice knocked once, then entered. Caroline, you have a visitor, against my better judgment. The music stopped abruptly. John stepped into the doorway and saw her. She stood at the pianoforte, hands frozen above the keys. She wore a simple day dress in deep blue, her hair pinned loosely at her nape, no jewelry, no artifice. And she was, he realized with startling clarity, beautiful, not in the conventional way society demanded, but in the way sunlight through leaves is beautiful, in the way truth is beautiful, in the way courage is beautiful. Your Grace, she said, her voice carefully neutral, I believe I made my wishes clear. You did, John replied. I chose to ignore them, for which I apologize. Again. Caroline's hands dropped to her sides. She looked at her aunt. Would you give us a moment? Beatrice hesitated, then nodded. I will be in the garden. Shout if you need me to throw him out. She left, closing the door behind her. The silence stretched. Caroline did not invite him to sit, did not move from her position by the pianoforte. Just waited. John had rehearsed this moment a dozen times. Now every prepared word fled his mind. I was cruel, he said finally, unforgivably cruel, and I am sorry. You wrote that in your letters. Yes. He took a careful step forward. But I needed to say it to your face, to let you see that I mean it. Caroline studied him. Why? Why does it matter whether I forgive you? You are a duke. I am no one. Your reputation survived perfectly well. John felt the truth like a blade. You are right. Society forgave me immediately, because I am a man, because I have power. The world excuses men like me and punishes women like you. Is that your apology? Acknowledging unfairness? No. My apology is this. I spoke from arrogance. I reduced you to nothing because it was easy. You were the first person brave enough to show me how poisonous that is. Caroline's expression did not soften. Pretty words, but words are cheap. You are right again, John said quietly. So let me offer truth instead. Since our encounter, I cannot stop thinking about what you said. About how I use cruelty to avoid genuine engagement. About how I mistake shallowness for sophistication. You held up a mirror, and I finally saw what I had become. And what is that? A man who values nothing of substance, who surrounds himself with people too afraid to challenge him, who has wealth and title and absolutely no idea who he is beneath them. The silence that followed felt different, heavier. Caroline moved away from the pianoforte, crossing to the window. Sunlight caught in her hair, turning brown to bronze. Why come here? She asked without turning. What do you want from me? John considered the question honestly. Forgiveness, understanding, a chance to know the woman whose courage shamed me into self-awareness. She turned, and he saw something flicker in her eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps even curiosity. You do not know me, she said. No, but I would like to. Why? The word was almost a challenge. Because you are the first person in years who has been real with me, John said. The first person who saw past the title and spoke to the man. And because when I close my eyes, I see you walking away from that garden with your head high, and I think that was the bravest thing I have ever witnessed. Caroline's breath caught, just slightly. But he heard it. You humiliated me, she said quietly. I know. You called me pathetic. I know. John's voice roughened. I was wrong. Entirely, completely wrong. One conversation does not change who you are. No. But it can be the beginning of change. She studied him for a long moment. John forced himself to remain still, to let her look, to accept whatever judgment she rendered. Finally, Caroline spoke. I will not forgive you easily. Trust must be earned, not requested. I understand, and I will not be anyone's project. Your redemption is not my responsibility. I would never ask that of you. Then what are you asking? John took a breath. Permission to know you, to have conversations, to learn who you are beyond my idiotic assumptions. Nothing more, nothing you do not freely choose to give. Caroline turned back to the window. The silence stretched so long he thought she would refuse. Then, without looking at him, she said, You may call tomorrow, for tea. 1 hour. Relief flooded through him. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, she said, turning to face him. Her eyes were clear and challenging. If you prove to be the same man who stood in that garden, this ends immediately. I will not endure cruelty twice. That is fair. She walked to the door and opened it. Our time is up, Your Grace. John moved toward the door, then paused beside her. The music you were playing, it was beautiful. Something softened in her expression. Just slightly. Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major. It suited you. She looked surprised. How so? Melancholy and strong at once, he said quietly. Beautiful in ways that demand attention rather than asking for it. Color rose in her cheeks. She looked away. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock. I will be here. John left before he could say anything else, before he could risk the fragile opening she had granted. Beatrice waited in the hall. Well, tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Tea. Do not make me regret allowing this. I will do my best not to. As John rode away, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. And beneath it, fascination with a woman who had every reason to hate him but had chosen, cautiously, to give him a chance. He would not waste it. John arrived at precisely 3 o'clock the next afternoon, carrying a small package wrapped in brown paper. Beatrice answered the door with the same skeptical expression. You are punctual. That is something. I am trying to be something worth her time. Beatrice's lips twitched almost into a smile. Caroline is in the garden. Do try not to be insufferable. She led him through the house and out to a terrace overlooking wild roses and lavender beds. Caroline sat beneath a pergola draped in wisteria, a book in her lap. She wore pale green muslin, her hair caught loosely at her nape. Simple, unadorned, breathtaking. She looked up as they approached. Her expression was guarded but curious. Your Grace, you came. I gave my word. John held out the package. I brought something, a peace offering, though peace cannot be bought. Caroline accepted it cautiously, unwrapping the paper. Inside was a leather-bound volume. Her breath caught. John Locke, an essay concerning human understanding. First edition. You said you read philosophy, John said quietly. I thought you might appreciate this. Caroline's fingers traced the embossed leather. This is extraordinary. How did you... I have a rather extensive library that has gone largely unread. It seemed criminal to let it gather dust when it might bring someone genuine pleasure. She looked up at him, surprise softening her features. Thank you. Beatrice cleared her throat. I will bring tea. Try not to kill each other while I am gone. After she left, Caroline gestured to the chair across from her. Please, sit. John settled into the wrought iron chair, suddenly uncertain. The garden hummed with bees. Somewhere a bird sang. Caroline set the book aside carefully and folded her hands. So, she said, you wished to have a conversation. I did. I do. John met her gaze. Though I confess, I am not entirely certain where to begin, perhaps with honesty. You said you wanted to know me. Why? Because you are the first person in a decade who has seen me as something other than a title and a bank account. Caroline tilted her head. I suspect many people see you as more than that. They see what they wish to see, the perfect duke, the eligible bachelor, the man with impeccable lineage and appropriate opinions. John leaned forward slightly. You saw the cruelty, the emptiness. You were the only one honest enough to name it. And that appeals to you, being called out for your faults? It terrifies me, he admitted. And yes, it appeals to me, because it means you will not lie to spare my feelings. You will not perform for my benefit. Caroline studied him for a long moment. What do you want from this? From these conversations, to learn who you are, to understand why you play Chopin when you think, to discover what books make you angry and which make you weep? John paused. To perhaps become someone worthy of your respect. Not forgiveness? I suspect forgiveness will take considerably longer than respect, if it comes at all. Something flickered in her eyes. Almost approval. You are correct. Beatrice returned with tea and small cakes, setting the tray between them. She looked at Caroline, who gave a small nod. Beatrice left again. Caroline poured with practiced grace. How do you take your tea? Black. No sugar. She handed him a cup, their fingers brushing briefly. The touch sent unexpected heat through his hand. She felt it too. He saw the slight widening of her eyes, the quick withdrawal of her hand. Tell me about your life, John said. Before London. Before the marriage mart. Caroline sipped her tea, considering. I was happy. My father's estate was small but comfortable. I spent my childhood reading in the library, walking the grounds, learning from our vicar. He recognized I had an inquiring mind and encouraged it. That sounds idyllic. It was. Until I turned 17 and my mother decided it was time to secure my future. She took me to London, presented me to society, and watched as I failed spectacularly to charm anyone. You did not fail. They failed to see you. Caroline's smile was sad. That is kind. But we both know the truth. I was awkward, too serious, too eager to discuss ideas instead of fashion. I made men uncomfortable with my questions. Good, John said firmly. Men who are uncomfortable with intelligence deserve their discomfort. She laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. You have changed your position rather dramatically. I have been forced to examine my positions. They did not survive scrutiny. They fell into silence, but it was not uncomfortable. Caroline refilled their cups. The afternoon sun slanted through the wisteria. dappling everything gold and purple. "What about you?" Caroline asked. "What was your life before you became the Duke of Ravensworth?" John set his cup down carefully. "I inherited the title at 22. My father died suddenly, heart failure. One moment he was lecturing me on duty, the next he was gone. I am sorry. He was not a warm man, but he was steady. His death left me unprepared for everything that followed. The estate, the responsibilities. The constant performance, is that what it is?" "A performance?" John looked at her. "Always, until you. Until that moment in the garden when someone finally demanded I stop performing and start being real." Caroline's gaze softened. "That must be exhausting." "It is." He smiled slightly. "This is the first real conversation I have had in years. Surely you have friends. I have people who want things from me. Access, influence, invitations. I have drinking companions and political allies. But friends who know me, who see past the title." John shook his head. "No, I do not have that. That sounds lonely." "It is." The honesty hung between them. Caroline looked away, but not before he saw compassion in her eyes. The afternoon stretched into early evening. They talked about books, about politics, about her love of music, and his neglected talent for drawing. She told him about her sister, about the relief of being in the countryside, about her aunt's eccentric wisdom. John found himself laughing. Actually laughing, something he rarely did. Caroline's wit was sharp and surprising. She challenged his assumptions, questioned his conclusions, made him think harder than he had in years. As twilight approached, John realized he did not want to leave, did not want this afternoon to end. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "I have taken enough of your time." Caroline stood. It was not entirely unpleasant. High praise. She smiled. "Perhaps you may call again, if you wish." "I wish very much." They walked to the front of the house. John's carriage waited. He turned to face her, suddenly aware of how close they stood, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, close enough to catch the scent of lavender from her dress. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me this chance. Do not waste it. I will not." He wanted to touch her hand, wanted to close the distance between them, but it was too soon, too fragile. Instead, he bowed and climbed into his carriage. As it pulled away, he looked back. Caroline stood in the doorway watching him. The setting sun, caught in her hair, turned her into something luminous. John leaned back against the seat, his heart beating faster than it should. He had come seeking forgiveness. Instead, he had found something far more dangerous. He was beginning to fall for Caroline Ashford. And from the way she had looked at him in that last moment, from the slight flush in her cheeks and the quickening of her breath when their hands touched, he suspected she was beginning to feel it too. The question was whether either of them would be brave enough to acknowledge it. Before we continue Caroline and John's story, I want to ask you something. If you are enjoying this journey of two people learning to see each other truly, would you subscribe to the channel? It helps us bring you more stories of courage, transformation, and love that defies expectations. And I am curious, what do you think will happen when John returns? Will Caroline let her guard down, or will old wounds keep them apart? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from you. John returned 3 days later, then again 2 days after that, then daily. Each visit followed the same pattern: tea in the garden, conversations that stretched into evening, reluctant departures that came too soon. Caroline found herself watching for his carriage, found herself choosing dresses with more care than she had in years, found herself thinking about him in the quiet moments between tasks. This was dangerous, she knew it, yet she could not seem to stop. On a Tuesday afternoon, rain forced them inside. They sat in Beatrice's library, surrounded by books and the sound of water against windows. John had brought another gift, sheet music, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. "I thought you might play it for me," he said, "if you are willing." Caroline took the pages, touched by his thoughtfulness. "You remember I play. I remember everything you tell me." The words sent warmth through her chest. She moved to the pianoforte and arranged the music. John settled into a chair nearby, close enough that she felt his presence like heat. She began to play. The notes filled the room, melancholy and beautiful. She lost herself in the music, forgot to be self-conscious, forgot everything except the emotion flowing through her fingers. When the final note faded, silence held for a long moment. Then John spoke, his voice rough. That was extraordinary. Caroline turned on the bench. He sat forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, his grey eyes intense. "You play as though your heart is breaking," he said quietly. "Perhaps it is. Why?" Caroline looked down at her hands, still resting on the keys. "Because I spent so long believing I was not enough, that I would never be chosen. The music lets me feel that pain without drowning in it." "You are more than enough," John said. "You are everything." The words hung between them. Caroline's breath caught. When she looked up, John was standing, moving toward her. He stopped beside the pianoforte, close enough to touch. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the bench. She nodded, sliding over to make room. He sat beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. The bench was small, intimate. She could smell his cologne, something with cedar and bergamot, could feel the warmth of his body beside hers. "Show me," he said. "Teach me something." Caroline's hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the keys. "You press here for middle C, like this," she demonstrated. John's hand joined hers, his fingers covering hers as he pressed the same key. The touch sent electricity through her arm. "Your turn," she said, her voice unsteady. John played a simple scale, concentrating. His hands were elegant, strong. She watched them move across the keys, imagining those hands touching her face, her hair, her... She stopped the thought, heat flooding her cheeks. "Am I doing it correctly?" he asked, glancing at her. Their faces were inches apart. She could see the exact shade of his eyes, storm grey with flecks of silver, could count his eyelashes if she wanted. "Yes," she whispered. "Perfectly." Neither of them moved. The air between them thickened, charged with something neither had named but both felt. John's gaze dropped to her mouth, lingered there. "Caroline," he said softly. "Yes, I want to kiss you." Her heart stopped, then started again, racing. She should say no, should maintain propriety, should protect herself from more heartbreak. Instead, she said, "Then why do you not?" John's hand rose to her face, cupping her cheek with such tenderness it made her ache. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. The touch was feather-light, reverent. "Because when I kiss you," he said, his voice low and rough, "I want you to be certain. I want you to want it as much as I do." "I do," Caroline breathed. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not, could not. Her eyes fluttered closed as his lips met hers. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning. His mouth moved against hers softly, carefully, as if she might break. Caroline's hand came up to his chest, feeling his heartbeat thunder beneath her palm. Then something shifted. The gentleness gave way to hunger. John's hand slid into her hair, scattering pins. His other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. Caroline responded without thinking, her fingers curling into his jacket, her mouth opening beneath his. The kiss deepened. John tasted like tea and something darker, more intoxicating. His tongue swept against hers, and she gasped, the sensation overwhelming. He swallowed the sound, his grip tightening. They broke apart, breathing hard. John rested his forehead against hers, his hand still tangled in her hair. "God, Caroline, you undo me." She could not speak, could only feel. The thundering of her heart, the heat pooling low in her belly, the desperate need for more. John pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. "Too much?" "Not enough," she admitted. His eyes darkened. Dangerous words, true ones. He kissed her again, slower this time, but no less intense. His hand traced down her spine, each touch deliberate and controlled. Caroline arched into him, wanting to feel more, to be closer. When they finally broke apart again, both were shaking. John stood abruptly, putting distance between them. He ran a hand through his hair, his breathing ragged. "I should go." Caroline remained on the bench, trying to steady herself. "Why?" "Because if I stay, I will not be able to stop touching you. And you deserve better than being compromised in your aunt's library. The concern in his voice, the restraint he was exercising for her sake, made her heart ache. You are a better man than you believe. I am trying to be. John looked at her, his expression raw. For you I am trying. He crossed to her one more time, took her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. The gesture was intimate, possessive. Then he was gone, leaving her trembling and confused and more alive than she had felt in her entire life. After that day, something shifted between them. The careful distance they had maintained dissolved. Every visit brought them closer. Every touch lasted longer. John would brush hair from her face when they walked in the garden, would take her hand to help her over uneven ground and forget to release it, would sit close enough on the terrace that their knees touched. Caroline found herself seeking those touches, leaning into him when they stood side by side, letting her fingers trail across his arm when she passed him books, testing the boundaries of what was acceptable, pushing against propriety because being near him felt necessary. One evening they sat in the drawing room. Beatrice had retired early, leaving them alone with only the firelight for company. John read aloud from a book of poetry while Caroline sewed, though she had long stopped paying attention to her work. She watched him instead. The way firelight caught in his dark hair, the strong line of his jaw, the elegant movement of his hands as he turned pages. He looked up suddenly, catching her staring. His reading stopped. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I am in danger. Of what? Of you. Of this. Of wanting things I should not want." John set the book aside. He moved from his chair to the sofa where she sat, close enough that his thigh pressed against hers. "What do you want, Caroline?" She set down her sewing with shaking hands. "You. I want you. You have me." John's hand found hers, threading their fingers together. "Every part of me. This is foolish. We barely know each other. I know that you are brave and brilliant. That you play piano like an angel and argue like a philosopher. That you make me want to be better than I am." John raised their joined hands to his lips. "What else do I need to know? Whether this is real or simply proximity. Whether you will still want me when we return to the world. Caroline." He turned to face her fully, his free hand cupping her face. "I have never wanted anything more than I want you. The world be damned." Then he kissed her again, and Caroline let herself fall. Let herself believe that maybe, impossibly, this brilliant, complicated man truly saw her, truly wanted her. His kisses grew more urgent, his hands less careful. He pulled her into his lap, and she went willingly, her hands threading through his hair. Their bodies pressed together, heat building between them. John's mouth traveled down her throat, finding the sensitive spot below her ear. Caroline gasped, her head falling back. His hands spanned her waist, holding her close. "We should stop," he murmured against her skin, even as his lips continued their exploration. "We should," Caroline agreed breathlessly. She made no move to leave his lap. His hand slid up her side, thumb brushing the curve of her breast through layers of fabric. The touch sent lightning through her. She heard herself make a sound, half gasp, half plea. John groaned. "Caroline, you are killing me." "Good," she managed. He pulled back, his eyes dark with desire. "I want to do this properly." "Court you." "Ask for your hand. And if I do not want to wait?" His jaw clenched. "Do not tempt me. I want to tempt you." Caroline met his gaze steadily. "I want everything with you." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. John's hands tightened on her waist. "Not yet," he said, though it clearly cost him. "When I have you, it will be as my wife, with your reputation intact and your future secure. Ever the gentleman. For you, I will be." John pressed a fierce kiss to her forehead. "Even when it kills me." Caroline slid from his lap reluctantly. They sat side by side, hands still joined, both breathing hard. "How much longer?" she asked quietly. "However long it takes to do this right," John said. "You are worth waiting for." She leaned her head on his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. They sat like that until the fire burned low, two people balanced on the edge of something that terrified and exhilarated them both. And when John finally left that night, Caroline knew the truth. She had fallen completely, irrevocably in love with the Duke of Ravensworth. The question now was whether love would be enough when the world inevitably turned against them. The summer heat arrived in full force. Afternoons became languid, drowsy with warmth and the hum of insects. John visited every day now, no longer pretending there was any reason except her. 3 weeks had passed since their first kiss. 3 weeks of mounting tension, of touches that lingered too long, of kisses that left them both shaking. 3 weeks of restraint that was slowly killing them both. Caroline woke one morning to find a note slipped under her door. Beatrice had gone to visit a friend in the neighboring county. She would return tomorrow evening. The house was theirs. Caroline's heart raced as she dressed. She knew what this meant, knew the opportunity it presented, knew she should feel scandalized or afraid. Instead, she felt ready. John arrived at noon as expected, but when she opened the door, something had shifted in his expression. He knew they were alone. She could see it in the darkness of his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "Your aunt?" he asked quietly. "Away until tomorrow evening." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. They stood in the entrance hall, the air between them crackling. "I should go," John said, though he made no move to leave. "Should you?" "Caroline." His voice held warning and hunger in equal measure. She stepped closer, close enough to touch. "I am tired of should. I'm tired of waiting." His jaw clenched. "We agreed. Marriage first. We agreed you wanted to do things properly." She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her palm. "But John, I am 27 years old. I have spent my entire life doing what is proper, being what is expected, and it has brought me nothing but loneliness." He covered her hand with his. "This is different. Your reputation will survive or it will not." Caroline looked up at him. "But I will not survive another night lying awake wanting you, and having nothing but empty propriety to keep me warm." "God, Caroline." His hand rose to cup her face. "You have no idea what you do to me, then show me." For a long moment they simply looked at each other. Then John bent and kissed her with such tenderness it made her ache. His hands framed her face, thumbs stroking her cheeks as his mouth moved slowly against hers. "Are you certain?" he whispered against her lips. "There is no going back from this." "I have never been more certain of anything." He kissed her again, deeper this time. His arm slid around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Caroline's hands moved to his shoulders, feeling the strength there, the barely controlled tension. "Come with me," she said when they broke apart. She led him upstairs to her chamber. Sunlight streamed through the windows, bathing everything in gold. John closed the door quietly behind them, then turned to face her. The reality of the moment settled over them both. This was happening. This line they had walked so carefully was about to be crossed completely. John crossed to her slowly, giving her time to change her mind. When he reached her, his hands went to her face, tilting it up. "If at any moment you want to stop," he said seriously, "you tell me, promise me, I promise." He kissed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her mouth. Each kiss was soft, reverent, as if she were something precious. His fingers found the pins in her hair, removing them one by one until her hair tumbled free around her shoulders. "Beautiful," he murmured, running his fingers through the waves. "You are so beautiful." No one had ever called her beautiful. Not truly. The word coming from his lips felt like absolution. Caroline reached for his cravat, her fingers fumbling with the knot. John helped her, unwinding the white fabric and dropping it to the floor. Then his jacket, his waistcoat. Each piece removed slowly, deliberately. When his shirt came off, Caroline caught her breath. She had never seen a man's bare chest before. John was all lean muscle and smooth skin. She reached out tentatively, her palm resting over his heart. He shuddered at the touch, his eyes closing briefly. "Your hands on me," he said roughly. "I have dreamed of this." She explored carefully, learning the planes of his chest, the definition of his shoulders. John stood perfectly still, letting her discover him, though she could feel the restraint in every taut muscle. Then his hands went to her dress, to the tiny buttons running down her back. He worked them open with surprising dexterity, his lips finding her neck as he did. Each button released sent another wave of heat through her. The dress slipped from her shoulders, pooling at her feet. She stood in her chemise and petticoats, suddenly shy. But when she looked at John's face, she saw only wonder. "Perfect," he breathed. "You are perfect." He lifted her carefully, carrying her to the bed, laid her down gently and followed, stretching out beside her. For a moment they simply looked at each other, the magnitude of this step settling over them. Then John kissed her, and thinking became impossible. His mouth was everywhere, her lips, her throat, the hollow at the base of her neck. His hand traced her side through the thin fabric of her chemise, learning her curves. Caroline arched into his touch, her own hands exploring the warm skin of his back. She felt his muscles shift beneath her palms, heard his breathing grow ragged. "Caroline," he said against her skin, "tell me what you want. You. Just you." His hand slid higher, cupping her breast through the fabric. His thumb brushed across her nipple and she gasped, the sensation sharp and sweet. He did it again, watching her face, learning what made her breath catch. The chemise came off, then her petticoats. John's hands worshipped every inch of skin revealed, his mouth following. Caroline had never felt so seen, so wanted. Every touch told her she was desired. Every kiss said she was chosen. When he finally settled between her thighs, she trembled with anticipation and nervousness. John kissed her slowly, thoroughly, until the nervousness faded and only need remained. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I need you to know that. This is not mere desire. I love you." The words broke something open in her chest. "I love you too." He entered her slowly, carefully, giving her time to adjust. There was pain, sharp and brief, but John kissed it away, murmuring tenderness against her skin. He moved gently, letting her body learn his forehead pressed to hers. "All right?" he asked, his voice strained with control. "Yes." Caroline wrapped her arms around him. "Yes." The rhythm built slowly. John's movements were careful, reverent, as if this was sacred. Caroline matched him, her body finding his pattern, pleasure building with each stroke. His hand slid between them, touching her in a way that made stars burst behind her eyes. The pleasure spiraled higher, tighter, until she broke with a cry that he swallowed with his kiss. John followed moments later, her name on his lips like a prayer. They clung to each other as the waves receded, breathing hard, hearts racing in tandem. After, they lay tangled together, skin damp and limbs entwined. John pulled the sheet over them and gathered her close. Caroline rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. "No regrets?" he asked quietly, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "None." She tilted her head to look at him. "You?" "God, no." John kissed her forehead. "I only regret all the time we wasted being afraid." They dozed in the afternoon heat, waking to make love again. Slower this time, less careful, learning each other fully. As evening fell, they dressed reluctantly. John helped with her buttons, pressing kisses to each inch of skin before it was covered. Caroline watched him in the mirror, memorizing this moment. The tenderness in his eyes, the satisfied curve of his mouth. "I should propose properly," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Get a ring. Ask your father's permission." Caroline turned in his embrace. "Yes, you should, but you will marry me regardless?" "Absolutely." He laughed, the sound full and genuine. "When did I become so fortunate? When you decided to listen to an angry woman in a garden. Best decision I ever made." They went downstairs hand in hand. In the kitchen, they found bread and cheese and made a simple meal, feeding each other like children playing house. Everything felt new, transformed. As darkness fell completely, John prepared to leave. They stood at the door, neither wanting to let go. "Tomorrow I will speak to your father," he said. "Make this official. He will likely refuse. Then I will convince him." John cupped her face. "I am not losing you, Caroline. Not to society, not to propriety. Not to anything." She kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. When they broke apart, his eyes were dark with renewed desire. "Go," she said, laughing. before we scandalize the household further. Tomorrow, he promised, and every day after that. Caroline watched his carriage disappear into the night, her hand pressed to her lips. Her body ached in ways both tender and sweet. Her heart felt impossibly full. She had given herself to him completely, and in return, he had given her everything. Love, desire, the certainty that she was seen and chosen and cherished. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And that, she thought as she climbed the stairs to her chamber, was worth any scandal the world might throw at them. John left for London the next morning with a singular purpose: to secure Caroline's father's blessing and return with a ring worthy of her. He promised to be back within a week. Caroline watched his carriage disappear, already counting the hours until his return. Beatrice arrived home that evening, took one look at Caroline's face, and smiled knowingly. So, the Duke has won your heart. Caroline felt herself blush. Is it so obvious? My dear, you are glowing. Beatrice embraced her. I am happy for you. Truly, he is a better man than he was. He is the best man I know. 3 days passed. Caroline walked the gardens, played piano, tried to read but found her mind wandering. Everything reminded her of John. The bench where they first talked, the library where they first kissed, the room where they had... A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Beatrice answered it while Caroline remained in the drawing room. She heard voices. Then her aunt appeared, her expression troubled. Caroline, you have visitors. Her mother swept into the room like a storm, her father close behind. Both wore expressions of barely controlled fury. Mama, Papa? Caroline stood, her heart sinking. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? Lady Ashford's voice shook. I am attempting to contain a scandal that threatens to destroy this entire family. Caroline's mouth went dry. What scandal? Do not play innocent. Her mother pulled a letter from her reticule and threw it on the table. This arrived 3 days ago. An anonymous letter claiming you have been carrying on an illicit affair with the Duke of Ravensworth, that he visits you daily, that you are unchaperoned, that you have been seen in compromising situations. The blood drained from Caroline's face. Who sent this? Does it matter? Lady Ashford paced. The rumours are already spreading through London. People are talking, speculating. Your sister's new marriage is being tainted by association. We have done nothing wrong, Caroline said, though her voice lacked conviction. You have been alone with a man, repeatedly, unchaperoned. Her father spoke for the first time, his disappointment evident. Caroline, what were you thinking? I was thinking that I finally found someone who sees me, who values me. Her mother laughed bitterly. Values you? He has ruined you. No respectable man will have you now. I do not want any respectable man. I want him. Then you are a fool. Lady Ashford turned to Beatrice. This is your fault. I sent her here to keep her safe, and you allowed this travesty. Beatrice's expression hardened. I allowed Caroline to make her own choices, to be treated as an adult rather than a possession. She is not an adult. She is an unmarried woman whose reputation is everything. Caroline stepped forward. He loves me. He intends to marry me. Her mother's expression twisted. Marry you? Caroline, use your mind. The Duke of Ravensworth could have any woman in England. Why would he choose a scandal-tainted spinster when he could have fresh debutantes lining up to be his duchess? The words struck like physical blows. Caroline felt her certainty waver. He would not, her mother continued. Men like him do not marry women like you. He was bored, you were available, and now you have given him everything with no guarantee of anything in return. That is not true, is it not? Where is he now? Where is this great love? He went to London, to speak with Papa, to get a ring. Her father shook his head. I have received no such communication, no letters, no visits. Caroline's heart stuttered. He left 4 days ago. Surely he would have arrived by now. Unless he never intended to come, her mother said quietly. Unless he got what he wanted and realized the cost was too high. No. Caroline shook her head. You are wrong. He loves me. Then where is he? The question hung in the air. Caroline had no answer. 4 days was enough time to reach London, to send word, to do something unless her mother was right, unless it had all been a beautiful lie. "You will return to London with us," her father said, "immediately. We will claim you have been ill, that the rumors are baseless fabrications by jealous gossips. And if John comes, if the Duke truly cares, he will find you," her mother said, "but I suspect he will not try very hard." They left the next morning. Caroline packed mechanically, her mind numb. Beatrice hugged her fiercely before she departed. "Do not lose faith," her aunt whispered. "Love is worth fighting for." But as the carriage rolled toward London, doubt crept in. 4 days, no word, no letter. What if her mother was right? What if she had been nothing more than a convenient diversion? The London townhouse felt like a prison. Caroline was confined to her room, allowed no visitors, no correspondence. Her mother controlled everything, determined to contain the scandal. 2 more days passed, then 3. Still no word from John. Caroline lay awake at night, remembering everything. His hands on her skin, his voice saying, "I love you." The tenderness in his eyes. It had felt so real. Had she imagined the depth of his feeling? On the 6th day, her mother came to her room with news. The Duke of Ravensworth has been seen at White's, at the opera, at Lady Hammond's soiree. She set down the society papers. He appears to be enjoying the season quite thoroughly. Caroline looked at the papers with shaking hands. There he was in the gossip columns, attending parties, seen with various young ladies. No mention of engagement, no mention of her. Something inside her cracked. Perhaps her mother had been right all along. Perhaps she had been a fool to believe a duke could truly love her. Then, on the 7th day, everything changed. Caroline was in the drawing room, staring out the window, when she heard shouting in the entrance hall. Male voices. One of them familiar enough to make her heart stop. John. She ran to the door, threw it open. There he stood, arguing with her father, his expression furious and desperate. He turned when he heard her, and his face transformed. "Caroline." "Your Grace," her father said coldly. "You were not invited. I do not care." John pushed past him, crossing to Caroline. "Are you all right? Have they hurt you?" "I am fine. But John, where have you been? Looking for you." He took her hands. "I went to your father's office in the city. He was not there. I sent letters to this address, received no reply. I went back to Derbyshire to find you gone, no word of where. I have been searching for you for days." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you had abandoned me." "Never." John cupped her face. "Never, Caroline. I would search the entire country to find you." "This display is unseemly," Lady Ashford said from the doorway. "Your Grace, if you wish to speak with my daughter, you will do so properly." "Fine." John turned to face Caroline's parents. "I'm here to ask for Caroline's hand in marriage." Her father's expression remained cold. "You have ruined her reputation, compromised her virtue. And now you think a proposal will fix everything? I know nothing can fix the harm done. But I love your daughter. I intend to marry her with or without your blessing. You presume much." "I presume nothing." John's voice hardened. "I am stating fact. Caroline is mine, I am hers. You can accept that and allow us to marry with your blessing, or you can refuse and watch us marry without it." Her mother stepped forward. "She deserves better than a man who treated her as a convenience." John's jaw clenched. "I treated her as the remarkable woman she is. I fell in love with her intelligence, her courage, her passionate heart, and I will spend the rest of my life proving I am worthy of her." "Pretty words," her father said. "Then let me prove it with actions." John pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a stunning sapphire ring. "Caroline Ashford, will you marry me? Will you be my duchess, my partner, my everything?" Caroline could barely see through her tears. "Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed her regardless of the audience. When they broke apart, Caroline's parents stood silent, witnessing something they could not deny. "This is happening," John said quietly. "You can embrace it and maintain your relationship with your daughter, or you can fight it and lose her entirely. The choice is yours." The silence stretched. Then Caroline's father sighed heavily. "Very well, you have my blessing, but there will be conditions. Name them. You will marry within the month, you will face society together, and you will prove that this is more than scandal and desire." "Done." John looked at Caroline, all of it, gladly. Her mother remained stiff. "Society will be brutal." "Let them be," Caroline said, finding her voice. "I have spent too long caring what society thinks. I choose him. I choose love." For the first time, her mother's expression softened slightly. "Then I hope truly that he is worth it." "He is," Caroline said, looking at John. "He absolutely is." As they left the house together that evening, officially engaged and facing an uncertain future, Caroline felt something she had never felt before. Absolute certainty. The world could judge. Society could whisper. None of it mattered. She had found love. Real, consuming, transformative love. And she would fight for it, with everything she had. The announcement appeared in the Times 3 days later. The Duke of Ravensworth to wed Miss Caroline Ashford. Society erupted. Caroline read the speculation in every paper, heard the whispers from servants, saw the scandal in her mother's tight expression. The tongue could speak of nothing else. Her Duke marrying a 27-year-old spinster he had publicly insulted months before. It was unprecedented, suspicious, delicious gossip. "The wedding is set for 4 weeks from today," John said, sitting across from her in her family's drawing room. He visited daily now, properly chaperoned, everything done correctly, but that is 4 weeks too long. Caroline smiled despite her nervousness. "My mother insists we need time to prepare. I would marry you tomorrow in your aunt's garden, with only the birds as witnesses. That would cause even more scandal. Let it." John leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I am tired of caring what they think. You say that now. Wait until we face them, and they would face them soon." Lady Hammond's ball was in 2 days, their first public appearance as an engaged couple. John had insisted they attend, despite her mother's protests. "We will not hide," he had said firmly. "We will show them we are unashamed." Now, as the evening of the ball arrived, Caroline stood before her mirror, doubt creeping in. The gown was beautiful, deep emerald silk that her mother had commissioned despite her disapproval. Caroline's hair was arranged elegantly, small diamonds glittering among the dark waves, but she could not stop shaking. A knock at the door. Her sister Sophia entered, radiant in rose-colored silk. "You look beautiful," Sophia said, embracing her. I looked terrified. "You look like a woman in love." Sophia squeezed her hands. "They will judge you, but Caroline, let them. You have found something most people spend their entire lives searching for. What if I embarrass him? What if society turns on him because of me? Then he will handle it." Sophia smiled. "Have you seen the way he looks at you? That man would fight the entire world for you." The words steadied her. Caroline took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and descended the stairs. John waited in the entrance hall, devastating in black evening clothes. When he saw her, his expression transformed into something that made her breath catch. "You are exquisite," he said, taking her hand and kissing it. "Every eye will be on you tonight. That is what I'm afraid of." "Good. Let them look. Let them see what I see." He tucked her hand into his arm. "Ready?" "No. But let us go anyway." The carriage ride to the Hammond estate was silent. John held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. The gesture was meant to comfort, but Caroline felt only mounting dread. They arrived to a crush of carriages. Light spilled from every window of the massive townhouse. Music drifted into the night air. Inside would be everyone who mattered, everyone who had dismissed her for 7 years, everyone who would judge them mercilessly. John helped her from the carriage. At the entrance he paused, turning to face her fully. "Caroline, listen to me. Whatever happens in there, we face it together. If you need to leave, we leave. If someone is cruel, I will handle it. You are not alone in this." She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They entered together. The major domo announced them, the Duke of Ravensworth and Miss Caroline Ashford. The ballroom fell silent. Hundreds of faces turned toward them. Caroline felt the weight of every stare, every whispered comment behind fans, every raised eyebrow. Then John began walking, and she walked with him. Heads turned to follow their progress. The whispers grew louder. Is that really her? She looks older than I expected. What can he possibly see in her? It must be a fortune match. Perhaps she trapped him somehow. Caroline kept her expression neutral, but each word cut. John's hand tightened on hers. They reached Lady Hammond, their hostess, who regarded them with barely concealed curiosity. Your Grace. Miss Ashford, how lovely to see you both. Thank you for having us, John said smoothly. May I present my fiancée? The word fiancée rang out clearly, claiming her, declaring them. Lady Hammond's smile was brittle. Congratulations are in order, I suppose. They moved into the ballroom proper, groups of people clustered together watching them. Some faces showed genuine curiosity, others showed disdain, a few showed barely hidden hostility. Caroline recognized women who had snubbed her for years, men who had looked through her as if she were invisible, the same people who now stared as if she were a curiosity in a museum. There, a familiar voice said. Lord Pemberton, Sophia's husband, approached with Sophia beside him. At least you have 2 allies here. Make that 3, another voice added. Beatrice appeared, resplendent in purple silk. I would not miss this for anything. The small group provided a buffer, but Caroline still felt exposed, vulnerable. Then she saw him. The man from the garden, one of John's former friends who had laughed at her that day. He approached with 2 other men, their expressions amused. Ravensworth, the man said. Quite a surprise, your engagement. Is it? John's voice cooled noticeably. Well, given your previous assessment of the lady. The man's smile was cruel. What was it you said? Intelligence cannot compensate for lack of appeal? Caroline felt John tense beside her. She put a hand on his arm, steadying him. I said many foolish things, John replied. I have since learned better, have you? Or have you simply lowered your standards? The group around them went quiet. Caroline felt heat flood her face, but before she could respond, John stepped forward. Let me be absolutely clear, he said, his voice cutting. Miss Ashford is the most remarkable woman I have ever met. She is brilliant, courageous, and possesses more depth of character than anyone in this room. If you imply otherwise again, we will have a problem. The man blinked, clearly not expecting such a fierce defense. Come now, it was merely jest. It was an insult, to her and to me. John's eyes were ice. Apologize. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Everyone watched, waited. The man's face flushed. I apologize, Miss Ashford. I spoke out of turn. See that you remember that, John said coldly. The man retreated. The whispers erupted louder than before. Caroline heard fragments. He truly cares for her. Did you see his face? Perhaps this is real. How extraordinary. A duke defending a spinster like that. John turned to her, his expression softening. Are you all right? She nodded, though she was shaking. That was not necessary. It was absolutely necessary. He cupped her face, heedless of their audience. No one insults you. Not in my presence. Not ever. The orchestra began a waltz. John extended his hand. Dance with me. Everyone is watching. Good. He led her onto the floor. Other couples joined, but Caroline felt as though they danced alone. John held her close, his hand firm on her waist, his eyes never leaving hers. I am sorry, he said quietly as they turned, for what those men said years ago, for my part in making you feel less than extraordinary. You have already apologized. I will apologize every day for the rest of our lives if necessary. John pulled her slightly closer. You are my choice, Caroline, not my compromise, not my redemption project. My choice. Because you are everything I did not know I needed. Tears pricked her eyes. The ballroom blurred around them. They do not understand, she whispered. They do not need to. We understand. That is enough. The music swelled. They moved together, perfectly synchronized, as if they had danced together for years. Around them, Caroline saw faces shift from judgment to curiosity, to grudging acceptance. Not everyone would approve, not everyone would understand, but some would. And those who mattered would see what she saw. A man transformed by love, a woman no longer invisible. When the dance ended, John's family approached. His mother, the Dowager Duchess, whom Caroline had never met. The older woman was formidable, elegant, her expression unreadable. "Mother," John said, "may I present Miss Caroline Ashford?" The Dowager studied her with sharp eyes. "So you are the woman who has captured my son's heart." Caroline curtsied. "Your Grace, he has told me much about you." The Dowager's expression remained neutral. "He says you challenge him, make him think, refuse to tolerate his nonsense." "That is accurate," Caroline said carefully. "Good." The Dowager's lips curved into a small smile. "The Ravensworth men need strong women. Welcome to the family, my dear." The approval from John's mother shifted something in the room. If the Dowager Duchess accepted Caroline, others would follow. Social standing was a complicated dance, and the Dowager held significant power. As the evening progressed, more people approached, some with genuine warmth, others with calculated interest, a few with thinly veiled hostility. Caroline navigated it all with John beside her, his presence a constant anchor. By the end of the night, Caroline was exhausted but victorious. They had faced society together, had withstood the judgment, had emerged still standing. In the carriage home, John pulled her close. "You were magnificent." "I was terrified." "You were magnificent anyway." He kissed her temple. "And in 4 weeks you will be my Duchess. Then let them whisper all they want." Caroline leaned into him, feeling the truth of it settle over her. She would be a Duchess, would have position and power. But more importantly, she would have love. Real, fierce, transformative love. As the carriage rolled through London streets, Caroline looked at her ring, sapphire glinting in the lamplight. In 4 weeks, everything would change. But the most important change had already happened. She had found herself, had found her voice, had found a man who saw her not as invisible, but as essential. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and that made them unstoppable. The morning of her wedding dawned clear and bright. Caroline woke to sunlight streaming through her chamber windows and the sound of birds singing. In a few hours, she would become the Duchess of Ravensworth. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only peace. Sophia and Beatrice helped her dress. The gown was ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves, simple yet elegant. Pearls adorned her hair, which had been arranged in soft waves. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked radiant, happy, chosen. "You are beautiful," Sophia whispered, tears in her eyes. Beatrice squeezed her shoulder. "Your mother would say I told you so, but I am too pleased to gloat. You chose yourself first." Everything else followed. The ceremony would be small, held in the estate chapel at Ravensworth House, only family and close friends. John had wanted it that way, and Caroline agreed. This day was for them, not for society's performance. The carriage arrived. Caroline's father waited to escort her, his expression softer than it had been in weeks. "You look lovely, daughter." "Thank you, Papa." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I was wrong. About him. About this. He loves you truly. I see that now." Caroline squeezed his hand. "I know." The drive to Ravensworth House took 30 minutes. Caroline watched the countryside roll past, her heart steady. No doubts, no fears, only anticipation. They arrived to find the chapel decorated with white roses and ivy. Guests stood as she entered on her father's arm. She saw John's mother, elegant and approving, saw Sophia beaming through tears, saw friends she had made in recent weeks, people who had seen past the scandal to the love beneath. And at the altar, she saw John. He wore black formal clothes, his cravat perfectly tied, his dark hair combed back. But it was his expression that made her breath catch, pure wonder, as if he could not quite believe she was real. Their eyes met. Everything else faded. Her father placed her hand in John's. The vicar began speaking, but Caroline barely heard. She was lost in grey eyes that saw her completely, that had seen her from that first confrontation and never looked away. I, John Alexander Harrington, take you, Caroline Elizabeth Ashford, to be my wedded wife. His voice was steady, clear. Each word a promise, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do us part. Then Caroline spoke her vows, her voice strong despite the tears in her eyes. I, Caroline Elizabeth Ashford, take you, John Alexander Harrington, to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. The vicar smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride, your grace. John cupped her face gently. Finally he whispered. Then he kissed her, soft and reverent, a promise of forever. The small gathering applauded. Caroline and John turned to face them, hand in hand. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, Duke and Duchess of Ravensworth. The breakfast that followed was intimate and joyful. Toasts were made. John's mother welcomed Caroline officially into the family. Beatrice gave a speech that was equal parts touching and irreverent, making everyone laugh. John never left Caroline's side. His hand found hers constantly. His eyes sought her out across the room. When they finally departed in his carriage, rice and rose petals showering around them, Caroline felt as though her heart might burst. They travelled to his country estate, arriving as sunset painted the sky gold and crimson. The house was magnificent, all stone and history, but John led her past the grand rooms to a private wing, to chambers that would be theirs alone. "Welcome home, Duchess," he said, carrying her across the threshold. Caroline laughed, breathless. "Is that what I am now?" "That is what you are." He set her down carefully, his hands lingering on her waist. "My Duchess, my wife, my everything." He kissed her then, and the gentleness of the ceremony gave way to hunger. They had waited weeks for this moment, waited through propriety and planning and endless social obligations. Now, finally, they were alone. John unlaced her gown with practiced hands, pressing kisses to each inch of skin revealed. Caroline worked at his cravat, his jacket, desperate to feel his skin against hers. They stumbled toward the bed, leaving a trail of elegant clothes behind them. When they came together, it was different than before. No urgency, no fear, just the deep certainty of belonging. John moved slowly, worshipfully, his eyes never leaving hers. "I love you," he whispered against her lips, "every day, every moment." "I will love you." Caroline arched into him, her hands tangled in his hair. "Show me." He did. With his hands, his mouth, his body, he showed her exactly how much she was loved, cherished, desired. And when they finally broke together, it was with her name on his lips and tears in both their eyes. After, they lay tangled in sheets, skin damp and hearts racing. John traced lazy patterns on her shoulder, while Caroline rested her head on his chest. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Only that we wasted so much time." He laughed. "We have the rest of our lives to make up for it." Caroline tilted her head to look at him. "What will we do with all that time?" John considered. "I thought we might travel, see the world. You wanted to read philosophy. We will visit the great universities. You wanted to think deeply. We will have conversations that last until dawn. That sounds perfect. And we will have children, if you want them. Small, brilliant creatures who inherit your mind and my stubbornness. I want that, all of it. Then you shall have it." John kissed her forehead. "Everything I am is yours." They dozed as darkness fell completely, woke to make love again in the quiet hours before dawn, slow and sweet, learning each other anew as husband and wife. When morning arrived, they remained in bed, talking and laughing like children playing truant. The Duke and Duchess of Ravensworth, hiding from the world in rumpled sheets and sunlight. "You know they will expect us to appear eventually," Caroline said, tracing the line of his jaw. "Let them wait." John caught her hand, kissing her palm. "I have waited 7 seasons to have you. They can wait one morning." Caroline laughed, the sound full and free. This was her life now. Laughter and love, and a man who saw her as essential rather than invisible. Months later, they returned to London for the season. Caroline walked into ballrooms on John's arm, her head high, her sapphire ring glinting. The whispers had changed. People spoke now of the love match, the unusual duchess who had captured a duke's heart. Some still judged, some still whispered cruel things, but Caroline found she no longer cared. She had what mattered: love, partnership, a man who defended her, cherished her, chose her every single day. Years passed. They had 3 children, each as brilliant and stubborn as their parents. They traveled to Paris, to Rome, to Athens. They hosted salons where Caroline debated philosophy with scholars, while John watched with pride. They grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. And when John looked at Caroline across a crowded room, his expression still held that same wonder from their wedding day, as if he could not quite believe his fortune, as if she were still the most remarkable thing he had ever seen, because she was, and because he had been smart enough finally to recognize it. The woman who had been called invisible had become unforgettable. The man who had been cruel had learned kindness, and together they had built something neither could have imagined in that garden so many years ago, a love that transformed them both, a love that lasted forever. Caroline Ashford spent years believing she was not enough. Then one moment of courage changed everything. She refused to accept contempt, and in that refusal found her destiny. John Harrington lived behind a mask of perfection until one woman dared demand he be real. He mocked her, was humbled by her, and finally, enchanted beyond reason, made her his. Sometimes the greatest love comes from unexpected confrontations. Sometimes choosing yourself first leads to being chosen completely. What would happen if you stopped accepting less than you deserve? If this story touched your heart, would you leave a like? It helps others discover these tales of transformation. Please subscribe so you never miss a story about love that defies expectations. And I would love to know, where in the world are you listening? Drop a comment with your location. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until the next story, remember, you are never invisible to those who truly see.